Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat. My name is Dylan.
And my name is Hayden.
And we are back with another episode. And as you can see, as you can tell, we have the wonderful Heather and Jane on our episode today. We've just spoken to them and we're recording this afterwards. So we can say, before we get into the delving into the nice conversation we had, that Hayden managed to absolutely mess up horribly. Hayden, well done.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that little secret for them. Yes, I did manage to mess up, and you will see how I managed to mess up when you continue watching this episode. So thanks, Dylan, for making me look like a buffoon.
Yeah, as soon as it cuts, I'm sure I make a comment within about 0.5 seconds. So
Yeah,
we might be able to imagine what Hayden might have done or not done.
well,
Anyway, Hayden.
there's a first for everything, isn't there?
Exactly.
But I tell you what, it was nice having guests back. So it's been quite a while. Obviously, we've been quite busy with other life things. Dylan's had a baby. I'm just about to have a baby. And we just haven't had a guest on in a while. In fact, I think since about episode 25-ish. So we've gone quite a few, 26 maybe, something like that.
I don't know.
So go back and check out our other guest episodes. We've had some really juicy conversations with people in the past.
Definitely. Before we dive in, as always, we're just going to do a quick catch-up. We won't be too long this time because we are raring for you guys to listen to the awesome chat that we've just had. But Hayden, I'm going to start with my week. I normally ask you, but I'm going to start with my week because I've spent my week flabbergasted. I've spent my week glued to a screen, unfortunately.
Please do tell us why.
Well, you see, we spent a long time with this podcast. We have got a really nice core following, okay? And very quickly, I'm going to talk about how in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we have genuinely received some of the nicest messages ever from people writing into us. And I always share them with you, and sometimes you share them with me, depending on who gets them. But from people we've never actually met, I've never met, and we've never seen before, who have listened to the podcast and have reached out to tell us just, A, they enjoy listening, and that's such a nice thing to hear. And B, though, most importantly, that they enjoy and have actually got confidence to stand up for things in their workplace. They felt like from listening to the podcast and us talk about things that some things are unacceptable, and they have the confidence now to, push back and just say, oh, sorry, could I have that in writing, please? Oh, sorry, could you justify that for me, please? And it's really nice to know that even just a few people who are listening, their work-life balance, their well-being is better because of the podcast. And I just wanted to start off with that, Hayden.
Well, it makes it all worth it, doesn't it? I mean, later on in when you listen to our interview with Jane and Heather, we ask about their podcast and we ask them about the purpose of their podcast. And it got me thinking about, why do we do it? What do I like about our podcast? And that, when we receive a message of someone being like, oh, thanks, I now feel like I can do this or I can do that because I listened and I realized that maybe this is quite toxic, or maybe I can be more confident. That, I think, is exactly the reason I like doing this. I just like the idea of people feeling a bit more empowered as a worker to be like, oh, these are my rights, by the way. And because that's something that's been just taken the mick out of for a long time in the public sector, obviously, particularly in teaching, because we live in that world. It might be the same in other public sectors as well. So definitely makes me feel good when we receive any message, really. So do write into us. We love it.
Oh, please do. And I guess this is the point I was making is we put a lot of time and effort, therefore, into trying to, put stuff out on social media, make reels, do things that kind of sum up our intricate thoughts and opinions. And,
and by really we mean you.
Yeah, pardon?
By we mean you.
yeah, me. Really important messages, though, and really, things we want to get across to teachers. And the algorithm doesn't really like that. So, we get a couple hundred views. It's lovely. We get some nice people, some comments are core based. We really appreciate everyone who interacts with us. So I just thought, I might make a couple of memes. Really, those strange memes. When you cut out in a meme that's going around like a dog laughing, maybe, or one of those memes from a film. And I put a couple of memes together. Oh, only about 600,000 views in the last 3 days.
It's mad, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
It's mad.
This thing I made in 5 minutes has just hit the algorithm, and we had notification. So if you're one of the new over 100 followers we've got in the last 3 days, or hundreds of thousands of people who are tuning in,
or one of the 3 followers we've got in the last 60 seconds, then from these
you're checking right now live. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's amazing, and we're really grateful to have you guys, and we hope you enjoy the podcast. And to our people who've been there from day one, the OGs, the real customers out there, we appreciate all of you. So I just wanted to say that, Hayden, sometimes just make a crappy meme and then the algorithm will say, thanks, mate, and push you everywhere.
Yeah, and don't make content that takes a while. So we're going to slowly transition this podcast, give it about 20 more episodes, and it'll only be memes. It'll be a big, giant meme. Yeah, thanks, Dylan.
There's no time for concentration anymore. So yeah, my week been mixed in with doing a bit of that. Back at work, obviously. Still, I still say back at work. It's been 3 weeks now, so getting into the groove there of never easy leaving baby at home. Don't like it. Really don't like it. I get home, I walk through the door, and then I just hold him for about an hour because I just feel like I've missed out. So,
that's nice though. That's nice. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to get home and just spend some time. And I think it's nice for Lauren to be able to just go to the loo and wash and just
have some time to not worry about the baby. Well, my week's been, I guess, in a similar way. It's been all baby related because we're getting very, 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 very close to our sort of due date, and I have just spent every minute worrying at school because I have a smartwatch, and I've got to deal with Lauren. If something's happening, obviously she just rings me, and I will see my watch will vibrate. I can't miss it. And I've had quite a few calls this week. It's just typical, isn't it? Just from random numbers and spam and things. And every time it goes, my heart sinks. I'm in the middle of like delivering an English input, and suddenly I'm like this, looking at my watch.
Oh no!
And it's just some random 020 number, and I'm like, oh, for God's sake, stop doing this to me. So my life is just perpetual anxiety, waiting for our baby to come. But by the time we do our next podcast episode, I'm gonna be a dad.
You're gonna be a dad. It doesn't matter how or when or where it will be by the time we do it. I love, by the way, I'm gonna jump on quickly, how you think 020 numbers are just spam numbers when 020 just means it's London.
I know, and to me, I'm like, cool. I don't know anyone in London. No reason. It's just spam.
And do you know what? They are usually spam.
Yeah,
so
they are.
I wouldn't worry too much about that. So yeah, I think we're just going to do a short introduction this week, guys.
Yeah,
I know some of you come up to me, and some of my friends have come up to me and said, "Dylan, the poo story was really funny. We'll have more poo stories in the future." Okay,
I'll have my own.
Yeah, you can join in. We're going to have double the newborn stories. My goodness me! But yeah, you've clicked on this episode. It's because you want not to hear from us as much this week. You want to hear from the lovely Heather and Jane. So without further ado, Hayden, do you want to cue us in?
I'll cue you in. Let's dive into our conversation with Heather and Jane.
Okay, so we're here again, definitely for the first time and not halfway because we forgot to record and already had a bit of a conversation. We're definitely here for the first time with the lovely Heather and Jane. I'm just going to get you guys, well, you know this by now, to very quickly introduce yourself, quickly with your background, and then we'll go from there. So, Heather, hey.
Hi, welcome for the first time. How excited to be here. I'm going to tighten it up this time and make it even better. Yes. We all love a dress rehearsal, especially as we approach Christmas, don't we? Anyway, I am Heather Wright of Reading Rocks. I was primary school teacher and senior leader for not senior leader for all that time, but for 15 years, so loads of classroom experience. And Reading Rocks, it's just something that evolved, really. I just started shouting out on social media about all the things I was doing in my school about reading for pleasure. And suddenly I was organising a conference, and that's kind of where Reading Rocks grew out of. And now we do lots of things all about making Reading Rock for every child and supporting teachers to do that. So nice to be here.
I love that tagline of yours, making Reading Rock. It's just so simple, but so effective. And I see you on socials and it looks amazing. So anyone hasn't heard of Reading Rocks, go and have a look. It's awesome. Jane, how about you? Hello.
Hi. I'm the creator of The Right Stuff. I'm in 15,000 schools, and my work is all about helping teachers be the very best they can be at teaching writing, reading, and unfortunately for me, spelling. I mean, what a nightmare.
I like I said, I really want to talk very briefly about spelling later, because I think every single teacher in the land, especially post-COVID, which I'm sure we'll come on to, I look at spelling and I think, oh, we need to go back to, where do we start spelling? I guess as. Yeah, let's go back to that word maybe. So that'll be a nice little chat later on. But
WOS.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, no.
So I was thinking that we could start off. I wonder what we could start off with, guys. Maybe we could start off with the podcast. Yeah, let's do that. That was definitely for the first time again. So as you know, you guys, you set up the Teacher Squad podcast. We're podcasters, and we have a message we want to get across and a reason why we do it. But having listened to yours, I'm really interested to hear from you guys first. Jane, we'll start with you. Where did the idea come from? Why have you started this podcast? And I guess importantly, why are you two guys together with Heather?
Yeah. Why are we together? I don't know. We're starting this really gorgeous relationship together. I've known Heather for years and years professionally, and we've always clicked. And I've had a podcast on my mind for a long time, and Heather just seemed to be the right person to kind of conjoin with. And we started because we wanted to amplify female voices. 76% of teachers are female, and Heather and I land in the 40 to 60-year-old bracket, which make up 46% of the teaching workforce, and we wanted to be there to I suppose in this era of burnout, do something a bit different, perhaps do a bit of bra burning. We wanted to be kind of feisty and real and honest, and kind of tell our truth. And sometimes we're a bit fragile, actually. We don't know all the answers, and we wanted to be the drive to work kind of voices of, we hope you're feeling seen, people out there. We don't want you to be lonely, and we want you to use your time wisely, because we're going to wade through stuff and put stuff kind of into your ears that's going to be handy and useful for your daily work, really.
Well, even for myself, I was driving to work the other day, listening to your most recent episode 9, and even I don't fit that bracket, maybe exactly of your,
You're
the audience.
welcome, though.
However, I was still sat there feeling really good about myself, and I think you do a really good job of that in your podcast in general. You make people feel good for being teachers and for being there, hoping to learn something, which it happens a lot with your podcast. I was sat there equally in the afternoon, marking writing, listening to your podcast at the same time, thinking, yeah, I should have done that. Actually, I could do this next time I teach this. But as a man driving to work, you bigging up men as well, and male primary school teachers, made me feel really good as a listener, equally as much as your female audience do as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, great. Oh, thank you, Hayden. That's adorable. Yeah, and we're just trying to get men to do some more washing up as well.
Listen, we're gonna that
message.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to edit that part.
Jeez, yeah. No, but I will come in on that, because I like making these. It's funny to make jokes and stuff, but it is a problem. It is a problem. We have discussed it before, and I think Hayden and I, coming from the point of our partners. Well, my partner's given birth. Hayden's partner's about to give birth. And we spoke about that kind of hidden work, that kind of work that goes on behind closed doors, and how society sees work as being as valuable as what you earn. And I think as teachers, we'd be really hypocritical as male teachers to be talking about strike action and being paid a fair wage, and how, of course, we're underpaid. We should deserve much more. But in the same breath, going home and then suggesting that, well, I've been to work. What have you been doing?
Yeah.
Work with the children. So I think that idea of, you joke about bra burning and stuff, but it's a message that needs to be seen. And something I've noticed, so obviously we've been doing a podcast, I think, since about February this year. So we're on about 38 episodes. And although the huge majority of teachers, like you're saying, are women, I do find that it's much closer to 50-50, if not dominated more by male voices, the podcast world. And Heather, I'm wondering if, is that important to you, that you want to get that voice across? Because I know it's one of your main messages, but how do you think that might affect, and what are you trying to open up basically for the majority of teachers with the podcast?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, that even though men are in the minority in our profession, that actually, in terms of being out there and the voice and, the ambassadors, quite often that they are male. And I guess it's a complex issue to unpick about what that is, and talking about the load of who does what in the home and everything. I think we as females can continue that as well, and actually, just because as a society, it's really deep rooted, and it takes a long time for that to unpick. And as a mom, the mental load of being a mom, quite often we can take on more than we should, because we just feel like we need to. So it's really important for us to be female voices out there, and give women a space to talk about the profession, to think about the profession, and kind of, there's a little bit of bumbling through it together, isn't there? It's it's a shared experience. Neither of us are perfect. We kind of are trying to be true, what we hope in our conversational style, and laughing at each other, is there's a warmth, and there's an honesty and a space. At the end of a school day, you've got that colleague who you can go to and go, that was horrendous, or this particular thing is really getting to me, and you need that honesty for real kind of impact and change, don't you?
There's something that we really admire about your podcast, and it's something we really try to do as well. And we have to try really hard to do this, Dylan and I, is not also being the perfect echo chamber of each other. And what you two do really well is you're obviously extremely knowledgeable within the subject of English, particularly, but you have differences in opinions. And it's nice to hear you come to a kind of conclusion together at the end, or even maybe agree to disagree, and just share these different insights and opinions without worrying about, we have to agree with each other, otherwise it might sound wrong. Whereas me and Dylan, we struggle sometimes. We kind of agree with each other, and we're like, yeah, everyone should think this. And that's it. That's the end of the episode. Thanks for agreeing with us. So were you two really close friends before this? Do you come in from more of a professional standpoint? How does the dynamic work?
Well, we live completely sort of in different places, So Heather lives in St. Ives. Is that right, Heather?
St. Ives, Cornwall.
Beautiful.
Yeah, come and visit me.
I was going to say, I never visit her because it's bloody miles away. It's the truth. And I'm based in Northampton, so our coming together was to do events, and CPD training. And Heather used to make me do events on Saturday. You're like, I've got 4 kids, that is rubbish. But when we did work together professionally, we always got it, and we'd had kind of a very kind of sort of female sense of sort of kind of mucking in when it was stressful. I knew when to talk to her, not to talk to her. I could read her kind of body language of like, yeah, she's on the edge, because she'd have hundreds of teachers on a Saturday morning. I was there as sort of part of the CPD program, but we just always clicked. And what has been wonderful about the podcast is that we're now meeting each other and getting to know each other as people. And it's wonderful, because we don't necessarily agree, and we won't know that until we're kind of tentatively at the edge of our thinking, sort of testing stuff out. And I just love Heather's ballsiness, where she says, I don't think I agree with you, Jane. And I go, okay, babe. And
I can only be that ballsy because I'm that many miles away. If we're in person, I don't think I would be.
Yeah.
And I need to be told that sometimes. I mean, I can get sometimes a bit of a problem, God complex. So to be told, shut up, it's really helpful for me.
This is why we're here, guys. We're going to tell each other just to stop talking every now and then. But I see, Jane, I want to jump in, because that's kind of your background with the podcast, and I want to link in with a part of your podcast, because I know you guys like to talk about sentences, and I know you're passionate about words, and I know you love English. And something we asked you to do beforehand was just have a think about your favorite book, your favorite children's book at the minute. And I can see you've got one in your hand, Jane. I know Heather's probably going to have about 54. So we'll come to Heather afterwards. There we go. Loads there. So Jane, do you want to start us off? At the minute, what's your go-to children's book? Because, people like Hayden and I, we're maths leads. We've got maths heads on most of the time. We need this inspiration.
Yeah. So this is hot off the press. It's by Catherine Rundell, and it's called Impossible Creatures. There's a map. We get introduced in kind of a very factual way to this land of creatures. But I just want to share the opening, because I'm fascinated by story openings and how we get gripped as a reader. And this is only short. and it's called The Beginning in capital letters. And we get to find out in a very minimalistic way, actually, about Christopher Forrester, and what Christopher's about. It was a very fine day until something tried to eat him. It was a black dog-like creature, but it was not like any dog he had ever seen. It had teeth as long as his arm and claws that could tear apart an oak tree. It says, therefore, with a great deal about Christopher Forrester, that he refused, with speed, cunning, and courage, to be eaten.
It's so good. It's such a good start. I know Hayden's in year 6 at the minute, and you were trying to get your children hooked, weren't you? And that power of the start of a book, making a child want to know what happens next, because
you know what,
I've read books before and it's not happened, Hayden.
They're so into, at the moment, the book they're into in my class, and they are just totally captivated. And it's the same sort of thing in terms of capturing your imagination and just building that image really well. Letters from the Lighthouse.
Oh yes, great.
Emma Carroll.
Yeah,
they just. I've never had a class that are this. They get angry at me when we stop. They're like, "No, you can't." They're like, "We've got to read the next chapter." I'm like, "Guys, it's like we're like 30 minutes into our lesson. We've got to do something else." And they're like, "Please, can we read some more?"
Oh, that is so
books,
good,
isn't it? That do
and
that.
You have to hold those moments, because the temptation is to just carry on reading, isn't it? But actually, to have all those buzzy feelings and anticipation and the desire for more.
Well, one of the children asked me, they said, "Why?" She was really cross. "Why does the author leave every single chapter on a cliffhanger?" And I said, "Why do you think?" And I just sort of left it at that. And they're like, "Oh yeah, because we want to keep reading."
Yeah.
But over to you, Heather. Now, obviously, leader of Reading Rocks, we know that you're probably sat on a pile of books right now. But if you were to pick your top,
it's not a chair; it's a pile.
It's a pile of books. My house is forget the 3 little pigs and the straw. My house is built of books. And when Jane finally comes to Cornwall to visit me, she'll blow it down with her huff and her puff. No,
are you calling Jane a wolf? Is that?
I like it.
And this is what we talk about, the camaraderie on your podcast. This is what we need.
We're a safe space, aren't we, Jane?
Yeah.
You know what's said on the podcast stays on the podcast, or in the listeners' ears,
and just
whatever.
out in the public forever as well. So.
It's funny with the podcast that you kind of just forget. We feel relaxed and we feel comfortable and we just go with it. But you asked me for one, and you can't do that to me. You cannot do that to me. So I was thinking I'd shout out about picture books. I love picture books. I love them right across the school. And, especially, you can read a picture book that's for younger children to year 6s, and it's just like a little cuddle for them. It's just warmth and enjoyment. So it's been shared on our podcast, but I am a big fangirl of Rob Biddulph. Odd Dog Out is my absolute favourite, but if you haven't seen it, Gigantic is absolutely gorgeous. But I won't say a lot about that because I'm going to desperately try and go fast and squeeze some extras in.
Go for it.
Yeah, go on then.
I wondered whether Jane might share this book as well, because she did read a little bit on our podcast in our Wonder of Words section. But this is the book of the moment, it seems. It is all over teacher social media.
The final year.
For very good reason. So it's Matt Goodfellow's The Final Year, illustrated by Joe Todd Stanton, a book written in verse, which is an interesting concept and might put people off picking it up, but don't, because that is what gives it such a warmth and a heart. So Nate is our character, and I feel like lots of people will connect with Nate. They've taught a kid with real deep issues and things going on.
What is it that makes the book so? Why is it so hyped? What is it? Is there a thing that's just the it about that book that makes it so good?
I think Matt has been very brave and unafraid and tackled something that's very raw and very real,
right.
And got under the skin of it. I think maybe some teachers might be anxious, and I have seen some people saying, I loved it as an adult, it made me cry, it got to me, but I'm not sure about reading it in the classroom.
Mm.
But actually, it should be read in the classroom, and those people who have been had it read to them have really connected with it. And I think that's the power in this book, that it touches on real stuff that our kids are dealing with.
Yeah. I just putting in there, Heather. I also think when books are magical like that and really resonate and kind of sort of talk in a very raw and real way, it's when and I think it's because he is a poet, there's this hyper specificity, if I can say that word, like it's he gets to really kind of small detail that means big things, and that's why it's so clever. But it's the poet in Matt that I think, how they can distill things so cleverly like that. That's why it's so excellent. And it's kind of got this urban sort of setting, that it's a bit gritty. Sorry, Heather.
No, it is jumping away. I think that there's something that poetry can do that prose can't.
Sure.
And interestingly, teachers shy away from poetry, and school libraries have a limited amount of poetry or out of date. And this is good that it's getting into classrooms and showing the power of it, and how Nate uses it, the character himself, to understand and get out and get down his feelings. Kids might really, really connect with that. Before you take a breath, I'm going to put another one in.
Ooh, go on, I want to hear it.
Did you see that? There's even a pointy finger. I'm getting really stirred.
I was about to say how good for me it is, and Hayden, I think, to see these recommendations. So go for it, another one.
Yay, go away. So yesterday I was on a virtual author event with Lindsay Galvin, and it just reminded me about how much I really enjoyed reading this book. It's called The Call of the Titanic. And Lindsay talks with so much knowledge and passion when she writes. So a bit like the wonderful Emma Carroll, who you mentioned, the historical fiction. And she really researches it and knows so much about it. So she's right in there, giving you the facts and the details with the warmth of the story as well. But this story is told from a different angle, so many kids and teachers will be familiar with the story of the Titanic, but this shows us the angle of the Carpathia, the ship that came to rescue. And we've got a young girl, Clara, in it, who's not supposed to be on the Carpathia, but she is there. And there she meets this gorgeous big Newfoundland dog called Rigel, who helps to rescue. And Rigel is actually based on an article from one of the New York papers at the time. It's probably unlikely that it was true. But it's a real page turner, and it's got some real snippets of the actual conversations that were had on those ships, and talks about the Morse code and that. It's a cracking read aloud.
Brilliant.
We like nothing better than reading aloud to each other on our podcast, don't we, Jane? And we absolutely think that should happen in every classroom every single day.
Well,
and this is a book that you can do that with.
I feel like I've got a few new suggestions now, particularly that one. I reckon my class will really enjoy that story. And thank you as well for talking about your podcast. I think before we move on to a new topic of conversation for our listeners, if you're enjoying our podcast, you'll absolutely love to go and listen to Heather and Jane's podcast as well.
Yeah.
Where can we find the podcast?
It's everywhere, isn't it? Yeah,
everywhere. Spotify.
It's everywhere. It's called the Teacher Squad Podcast. We've even got emails, and I've had none. And Heather's had 3. So this is so exciting. So actually, if you want a shout out, Heather at, don't bother sending me one because I wouldn't be sure, so Heather at Teacher Squad Podcast. Yeah.
.com.
Don't forget that. We'll get there otherwise. Maybe that's what's going wrong with your guys, Jane.
It would be really amusing to receive an email from somebody else's podcast and not our own.
I might email Jane 4 times just to make it
interesting. Do it. About maths.
Well, We're going to come on to English later on. I'm really, really looking forward to that chat. But just beforehand, we've got something else in common. Obviously, we both have our own podcasts that we release weekly. But there is something else that I think a lot of teachers are very interested in hearing, especially when we talk to them. They always ask about our business. Because we've taken that dive into something to do with education. Hayden and I run tutoring business, and obviously we've touched on it already. That Heather, you run Reading Rocks. Jane, you run the right stuff, all your courses with reading and writing. And I guess the question is, we'll start off with Jane. Just what is an overview of your business? What do you do, and what's the purpose of it? Like, why did you set it up, and what makes it successful?
The purpose of it is to really, in a very nitty-gritty, practical way, help us to be the best teachers than we can be. And I'm absolutely fascinated on how learning happens, and a lot of my work is around kind of the small stuff of a kind of improvement to really kind of sharpen that practice, because we want to be as effective as we can be. And the dilemma we've got at the moment as teachers, we've got all the noise of I'm not talking about the classroom, just that sort of educational noise, and all this science and all the reports, and then the promise that the DFE aren't going to send us any more at the weekend, but they keep doing it. And I think sometimes you can't see the teaching and learning woods for the science of learning trees. Do you know what I mean? And I think
really,
what I pride myself is having CPD that is very kind of clear and gives teachers a roadmap to sharpen what's happening at the chalk face. And a lot of that work is very kind of, we get to the small stuff. And as part of CPD provision, I roll my sleeves up and regularly I'm teaching in class so that we can almost use it as a diagnostic tool. Why did that little zhuzh have this impact? Is this better or is this better? Just because if we get too far away from teaching and learning, like, who are we? That's, and I feel very strongly about that. But I really do enjoy the very small conversations about this is good, but could we make it even better? I really care about that.
Well, English is, I'm saying is very confidently here, it's the hardest subject. It is the hardest subject.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it. Even the word English, I think really that breaks down to reading as a whole subject.
Yeah.
It breaks down into writing, which could break down further. So as someone who is perhaps less confident with teaching English, the idea of having a really well-structured scheme of learning, some sort of structure given to me is hugely appreciated as a teacher. So what you do, I think I personally would massively benefit from that, because I find it really hard to know what angle to come at from.
Yeah, and it's actually not about a scheme. It's about a schema. That we have kind of mental models and visual models and pathways where we can show children that it's not just that we own it because we wrote it on our kitchen table, that they know the long pathway of, it's not about a one-off wowsy lesson. We know that. It's about a very clear, specific sequence of teaching, and that sort of, how does Monday link to Wednesday, link to Tuesday? And do they remember what happened on Monday? Sure. Probably not. But, we need to have a clear sense of sort of the long journey of learning, and then actually what's the best thing to do? The best thing to do to teach kids to be good at talking, drama, reading, writing, spelling. There's so much to unpack. And we all know that English is the doorway to the rest of the curriculum. So It's so vital. And I keep showing off to Heather that the DFE and the Education Endowment Foundation keep wanting to meet with me to chat about it. But,
Oh, Jane, your life is just so difficult. I mean, can you cope with the pressure?
I don't.
Jane,
please stop
you're
blowing
too busy
smoke
re-recording
up
our podcast, aren't you?
I might just go and do my makeup and have an outfit change in a moment.
Well, I mean, bringing it full circle, you said at the start, you are in 15,000 schools, and I think that speaks for itself. And I can also tell you that someone I work closely with, my assistant head, when I told her that we were going to be speaking to you guys, she was like, "Oh wow, I've used one of the units from Jane Considine's website." and it was the best writing I ever got out of those children. And that is proof for me that's from school, from someone on that ground floor using it, and it's working, it's successful. So
look at you blowing smoke up her. You need
to
bring her back down.
Well, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on.
Down a peg or two.
Heather, I'm gonna come in then. Enough about Jane and writing units and things. But you are the leader of Reading Rocks. So obviously, on your socials, that's I think where I first came across you, and it kind of lit up my social scrolling. It was really nice. I can doom scroll sometimes, and I follow politics, screen, and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm just gonna get. But everything about education is just negative at the minute. The strikes are on there. I see people moaning about, and I'm the worst for moaning as well. And I followed you on your socials, and it was just almost like a breath of fresh air for me in terms of this is why we're teachers. This is what we want children to be doing. We want them to be exposed to all of these amazing authors, all of these unbelievable pieces of literature. And I feel like that's getting lost a lot of the time because we're too stressed to think, I've got to read a book. Oh, God, I've got to read this book. And then I've got to plan a whole unit. And, Jane, you can come in with the helping there of how the writing schemas. And I think what Reading Rocks is doing, and maybe you can talk a bit more about your purpose. But from my point of view on the other side as a teacher, I just get really excited about seeing these authors and seeing these books and these covers and these discussions. So why did you start it off, Heather? Like what made you set up Reading Rocks and how's it grown since?
Thank you for blowing some smoke up my arse as well. That's really nice.
It's unfair, isn't it?
Feel balanced out now.
Yeah.
And thank you for that. And Jane will attest to this, that I'm a massive optimist and full of hope and happiness, and that is what I shout out about on my socials, and keep it light and keep it positive, and talk about the positives and the benefits. Reading Rocks for me is, from my angle as being a teacher, I think sometimes the support that can be offered teachers doesn't see it from those feet that are firmly in front of the chalk face, and everything that we do, I try to do it with the angle of what does it feel like being the teacher in that school, enthusiasm rich but terribly time poor, and that's what we try to do. So our teacher subscription service is ideal for people like you who absolutely want to enthuse their pupils and engage them with books, but it isn't necessarily your standout subject.
Yeah.
So what we do is we look at, there are thousands, we are in a golden age of children's literature, but there are thousands of books published every year, and it's my privilege to select some that are suitable for the different phases, so that you can pick it up and go, I know this is going to be great in the classroom, I know this is going to be suitable for my year groups, and you can have that constant drip of quality texts that are going to be great. And also, Jane said about that bracket that we both fit into, the 40s to 60s. I'm just going to add that I'm only just in that bracket. And but to be honest, I've never been cool. I was going to say that we try to keep down with the kids, and just by saying that, I've made myself sound like a real middle-aged mother. But there we go. We, that thing on YouTube about unboxing. So we buy into that, and the kids love it when they're unwrapping and engaging, and there's a buzz and an excitement, and it just adds a little extra bit. Well, but go on.
Even as a soon-to-be parent, the thought of, just outside of the classroom for a minute, the thought of knowing that I can go to your website and I can trust in your expertise, and I don't have to sit there guessing really what are good books because I haven't had the time to read them, is really valuable to me, and I will absolutely be subscribing for my child because I know that these are going to be some great books. So there's that personal avenue as well, and then I can also take it into school because I'm a teacher. So it's it's a very valuable website and resource to me.
Oh, personally. Hayden, that's given me goosebumps. Just
there we go.
It's that lovely, like just that image of I am going to be dad with my child reading, that is
and I want
just
to read quality things, and
Yeah.
knowing that
Yeah.
that's there for me is so.
Yeah.
It just takes such a weight off my chest, because I am worried that I'm not an avid reader, so I'm worried that my lack of expertise is just going to be a burden. So it's nice
I'm
that this
almost
exists.
jealous of you for that new experience, because there are going to be some books that are your books, and there's going to be some real excitement and connection, and books that just hold a real special place, that's just of you and your child.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Beautiful. I just want to draw a line, I suppose, under the business thing, because it's something Hayden and I think about all the time. And that's, like you said, doing businesses with schools. We know the situation of cash and how strapped we are of funding and things like that. And the idea of, charging schools for things. There's always a grey area in our hearts as educators, because we know we're trying to do it for the children. Of course, they come first, but it's a business. And I think one thing I've decided over time, and I've become more comfortable with, and I think both of your businesses are a really good example of this, is that it's providing an invaluable service to teachers. So what you're doing is, yes, it's a business. Yeah, of course, it's going to cost money for schools to do these things, but it's a payback of you stepping out of the classroom as much and using that expertise to help so many more individual teachers. To me, that's really powerful. And I think both of your businesses do that really well. And of course, it's a business. We're going to make money out of it. It's going to be successful. But there's a reason it's successful, is because you're having such an impact. And you two get to sit there and say, you have impact hundreds of thousands of children between you in what you're doing. And I just want to say, I think it's amazing what you've both done.
No.
Oh God, we're not used to this, are we, Heather? Tell you what, I like all this professional love being bandied around. I'm coming here again. Can we come on every week?
Yeah, it's been great.
I love
it. Promise,
the Teacher Squad Repeat Sleep podcast, guys.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Hey,
it's like 8 out of 10 cats do countdown. It's like a mashup.
Yeah.
I like foursomes anyway.
Oh, Jane!
What?
And with that, we shall move on to the English segment. So, I must say, like we've touched on before, like I said it a million times, Hayden and I, you just float. I think as a teacher, you tend to float to a subject. I know people who are history specialists, and they just love it, and they sink their teeth, and they're invaluable to me because I'm not, and I get to learn from them.
Yeah.
And you guys, like we just said, you guys have floated towards English in general.
Yeah.
So we just got a couple of questions just to wrap up, but this is what I really want to sink my teeth into here. And we will kind of direct reading towards Heather. We'll direct writing towards you, Jane.
Yeah.
But do jump in if either of you have anything to say, because I know that you're both involved in everything.
Yeah.
So I want to start with you, Jane. I'm going to start with writing because it comes from a personal place as a teacher.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say the C word.
Yeah.
COVID. It's post-COVID.
Yeah.
I know it's a bit, careful there. It's COVID I was talking about.
Yeah.
But it personally, and I'm interested to see what you think, I think writing was the number one most impacted negatively from COVID.
Yes.
I think the baseline now, I'm in year 4.
Yeah.
And we work in a junior school. So I've worked in 3 and 4 in recent years. The baseline we see is much lower than it has been before COVID.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to you is, in terms of writing, how can we go about trying to bring up those standards? What is the main focus? Where do we start? Do we start with sentence level? How do we get children writing more? It seems like an impossible task to me, and I know it's an open question, but what's your views on how we go about this from the bottom up, trying to improve writing standards?
The truth is, you do have to go for the big stuff. You have to build a something. You have to help children kind of be architects of a completed something. And you've got to go for the big stuff in writing, but because you're going to try and write a balanced argument or write an adventure story or a bit of science fiction, what is happening there? That is an orchestration of so many things that have all got to come together. What's the audience and purpose? Have you got enough knowledge? have you got enough facts and information? What are you putting in? What are you leaving out? You need to think about the tone of your writing. You need to think about the grammar of your writing. Can you spell was? What? You know what I mean? What?
Yeah, the
Shut
answer's
up.
no, by
Of
the
course I
way, for
can't.
most children. So.
I can with a spray can.
Because BECOS. Oh my God. So it's so difficult. So it's not just do this one thing, it'll be okay, because it won't be okay. Because why writing is so tricky is the orchestration of everything coming together. So it is massively pressurizing and very overloading. So what we need to do as teachers is it's not actually about a scheme. It's about having really clear schemas, which are going to be kind of filing cabinets of thinking for children, when we're going to help children understand their long journey with writing, and where their focus needs to be in real time, in kind of that real moment of writing. Now, you're right to feel that writing is hard, and there are 6 national weaknesses with writing. Number one, at sentence level, children are suffering from the fragmented sentence. And, you could argue that the national curriculum is part of that problem, because they say to kids in year 2, right, can you use the conjunctions when, if, that, and because? And that's a really sneaky sort of Michael Gove way of saying, right, well, all right, year 2, can you do complex sentences? And in the good old bad old days, complex sentences were the realm of year 5 and 6.
Yeah.
So the pressure's high and hard. And if you look at the national curriculum, oh my goodness, I mean, you've got passive voice, subjunctive form, relative clauses. I'm supposed to be one of the national trainers on grammar, and I'm coming out in hot sweats. It's really tough. So there's and so year 2s, because we're trying to sort of like put the pressure on of a complex sentence, they don't have a strong concept of a sentence, you start getting fragments where they're like just lobbing a full stop, and it's actually just, well, that was like a bit of a subordinating clause, and you just lobbed a full stop there, because they're sort of their learning is fragile and it's on the edge, and they're testing out. And then we've got the other big weakness in their writing, the run-on sentence.
Yep.
And it's not just and then, and because it could be also it was, and so later. So it takes so many different forms, and children will constantly get into run-ons when they're testing something out, because they want to practice it before they can, pull back. So, and then it was all a dream.
I think as well, a typical outcome as well, and you probably experienced this as well, is of children being taught way too many things too early, right? Is, we've identified the run-on sentence. How do they fix it? Comma in the middle.
Yeah.
That is so common, isn't it? I'm constantly battling the next layer of, I've learned this. I've sort of learned a comma. I haven't really learned how to use it. Otherwise, I wouldn't put it here.
Yeah.
So I'll fix it with a comma. And then you've got
comma
another
splice
battle.
is not nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
No.
And then and this regionally changes as well, but some regions, I'm not picking on Liverpool here, Heather. How very dare you? But so we have more issues in some regions with tense, because of how their spoken voice is kind of occurring, and how that will kind of just tense is really hard. Because there's so much to learn with tense. Cohesion, they're awful at cohesion.
I think that's something that people really neglect. Cohesion.
Yeah, massively neglect
so
it.
in cohesion, what do you mean by that in terms of the writing? Is that just it making sense, or is that?
Yes, so it's a lot of cohesion. Children, right? Okay. Imagine you've got kids and you've shown them a film, and you're doing some writing from a film, and there might be a child in this film who has made a sandcastle, and then in the film they've run into the cave, and what kids will do will write amazing sand description, and then they'll write amazing scary spider dark description. But they won't write a sentence that says, Ben ran into the cave.
Right.
But the thing is, what we do as teachers, we have become obsessed with cohesion is time adverbs.
Yeah.
Cohesion is conjunctions. And I'm telling you now, loud and clear, cohesion is common sense, obvious, clean sentences.
Yeah.
Ben ran into the cave. Hey, there's no conjunction in there to write home about. There's no time adverb. A lot of cohesion is kind of missed common sense step sentences. So yeah, kids are awful at cohesion, tense, spelling, punctuation. They're awful at all of these things, but we can't get depressed by it. But what I am gonna say is, once you have your long mission of what you're going to build, and you're going to, we're going to be architects of this, our daily teaching as teachers, we've got to slide between two modes of teaching, which is you can't write in a vacuum. You need knowledge, and that knowledge that we pass over to you, we can actually do this in quite an enjoyable way. I know fun sometimes gets sort of packaged as like a dirty word, but it's we need to find this knowledge. We need to be immersed in things, and those things we can live together. Yes, we can watch YouTube clips of David Attenborough to find out more about sharks, but we can also live going out into the community and walking in the woods and living that walk and collecting ideas. So our teaching, we have to consider it in two ways: kind of knowledge, experience, immersion stuff. But then when I teach you writing, now we know what we're going to build, the big stuff.
Yeah.
And we know this now, we know this because of the science of learning. Sentences is where meaning is yielded. And that is where the most amount of meaning is made. So our hard graft and our craft work has to be around the concept of a sentence, because at the concept of the sentence level, we're dealing with all of those national weaknesses. And it's the mechanics and the magic of sentence construction. And then this, I will shut up.
We were wondering, Jane.
Do it.
It's valuable.
Home line, go for it. Is we have to be expert modelers. Right. And modeling for me there's so many different nuanced versions of that. And I think everyone goes, like that thing in teaching. Yeah, I do that. Yeah. Do you demonstrate writing? Yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do that. And I think because it's got a, yeah, I do that nature to it, I think it's got so many things that we need to, there's almost like 200 different types of modeling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that I can't talk about today because we won't go home.
Be there all day. No, but it's powerful what you're saying. All of the weaknesses, I think the first step is to identify them. I think from our point of view as teachers, we need to identify, okay, what from that baseline are we not doing properly? And we need to focus on them, because before we do that, if we then jump into subordinating clauses and trying to do this or that, even if they're not in year 2, if they've missed that step in year 2, that's where we need to go back to. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
I think it's the pennies looking after the pounds, isn't it, about those sentences? Yeah. As a kid at school, actually, I was much better at science and maths. And I think I kind of was a victim of the kind of, they'll catch it kind of philosophy. And actually, I didn't catch it in that sense. And it was when I became an early teacher that I flourished in that, when I understood that actually, this will tick your boxes as maths leads, that you can look at the nuts and bolts of writing in that formulaic sense. Yeah. And we need to take the time to teach them the rules. Yeah. And give them space to play with those rules, so they are building those very firm foundations of this is what a sentence is, and
reasoning and problem solving.
And kind of what the word evoke, I think, is really important in writing. Like Jane read on our last episode, a little chunk about a storm, and we can get kids to describe a storm, but if we want to say to them, how do you want to make the reader feel? And when they've got that purpose, when they've got that toolkit of nuts and bolts, and as Jane said, that whole kind of picture, then they can put it together. So as people who are more attuned to maths, they switch on that kind of formulaic.
You're talking our language now.
Yeah.
We learn our number bonds.
Yeah.
And then we can play around with those as we apply those to calculation.
Yeah.
And we can see that clear progression. And actually, we learn to play around with conjunctions, and we learn to play around with adjectives and adverbs and the mood that they can evoke. And then we've given them the space to play and be creative.
That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me, very much so.
I think I actually don't shut up about this, which is I want AI to invent for me a bubble on top of my head, like an electronic bubble, because
you may have mentioned this just a few times, Jane.
No, but I am obsessed about it, because this to me is like metacognition. You want to see inside the writer's brain. You want to see inside the reader's brain. I'm actually going to make it as visible as possible. And what we've got to do, and I'm going to tell you, all your listening teachers out there, one of the most powerful quick win things you could do with writing is, we're trying to write a letter or we're trying to write a holiday brochure. You need to know the big push of the writing, and it's like, is it smiley face or sad face? Because if we're writing a storm that's smiley face, that's a whole set of different precise words and language than it is if it's a sad face storm. And if we're writing a holiday brochure and we're trying to sell Italy, well, it's smiley face language. And I sometimes think we've not put in the schema of the big stuff. Like, kids need to know what side of the street they're writing on, positivity or negativity, and we've got to make that we need to be crystal clear explainers and that's what modeling's about. That it's not just, oh, hi, I'm amazing, as the modeler, because I know I'm amazing, actually.
But you're right, and I think you kind of captured with the whole speech bubble, thought bubble thing. You're right.
You are amazing.
Thank
you're
you.
right.
You've captured the thing that I think I find the hardest about modelling is getting across my thoughts as a confident writer to the children in a way that they completely understand. You're absolutely right.
I think that the simplicity of positive and negative, that's a really nice place to start, I think, because children grasp that. They get happy and sad. They get positive, negative. They can understand that. So we're doing adverts at the minute in our writing.
Smiley
and we've
face,
been banging on about positivity. Yeah, it's just positivity. You're trying to sell it. So perfect.
Just start your lesson like that. Smiley face, babe, and we're done.
We're done. That is the CPD, by the way. When you buy a course, it's just smiley face, done. So I wanted to finish off.
Send me the check, please.
You got a percentage of any royalties my children make from future book sales. So
perfect.
So we wanted to finish off with this, but it's a big question. I know we don't have too long left, so we're going to try and condense this.
Good luck with Heather. Sentences. Good luck.
I'm sorry, Heather. I'm sorry. Yeah, we've had a lot of writing now. We want one word, please, for written. I'm joking. So in terms of reading, and I know I'm going to bring Hayden into the end of my question here, because growing up, I did read. I read as a child. I could find something I was interested in too, and I kind of grew out of it. Hayden never really was a reader. Aww. And I think both of us, I hope anyway, after 8 or 9 years, we do consider ourselves quite good teachers, we can teach well, but we've spoken about our insecurities around English in particular. And I'm wondering what your thought is, Heather, about being a reader and being a teacher. Are they inseparable? Can you be a teacher who is fantastic at teaching English, but doesn't necessarily go home and find joy in reading a book themselves? Or is that something we really have to work on? What's your opinion on that?
And be brutal. Don't worry about us.
Oh, no, I won't. I think actually there's a bit of both in there. Because we have to be honest that in our profession, not every teacher is going to be an avid reader and an avid reader of children's literature. But it is our professional duty to be up to date with children's literature and to enthuse about it. We cannot ignore the research that children who read of their own choice will attain better, will have better well-being, will be more empathetic. And Jane said before about it being the doorway to the rest of the curriculum. But I'm aware that we cannot just turn switches in teachers and say, you are an avid reader.
Sure.
Interestingly, I spoke to Emma Rogers recently at an event, who is a senior lecturer for primary education, but she's doing a PhD with her student teachers and asking them the question, do you identify as a reader? And many of them, and in the room that I was in, it was full of reading advocates. And many of them kind of did the... but there's so many teachers who join in the profession who do not identify as a reader. And powerfully, the work that Emma was doing was actually showing them that they are readers. And I think there's a sense of a misunderstanding between what a reader looks like. We love a waggle, don't we? Kind of, what a great reading teacher looks like is actually some of those big voices on social media who read a novel a day and share all about it, and they're up to date, they know every single one. And it can put many teachers off from thinking, well, I can never be that. That isn't who I am.
Yeah.
But actually, on a day-to-day basis, Hayden, you read a lot. And you read for your purposes, and you choose to do that of your volition is there. And in that sense, you can navigate an understanding of what being a reader is like for you. Sometimes I'm at events with authors, and people say to me, "Oh, are you a writer? What have you written?" And I just go, "No, I'm just the bookseller." And the word "just" comes out.
No.
Yeah.
And it's played on my mind a little bit since this question's been there, and thought, I haven't got a published book. I'm not writing something at the moment that is to be a published book. But am I a writer? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Sure.
I write content constantly for the podcast. I write content for blogs. I write content for social media. So I am a writer in my way and for my purpose. And I think when you step into the shoes of that character and go, do you know what? I am a reader. And I am a reader of my identity, and I'm comfortable with that. That breathes out to your classroom, and the children find the space to be readers of their own identity. And you may share with them things that you've been reading. It might not be stuff that they want to read. You might have been reading news articles, political blogs, whatever.
He's
But
usually
they
reading
can
the back of a Maltesers packet. That's usually what he's reading. So.
I've memorized
share
that
with them. So I think there's a balance of coming to an understanding of who you are as a reader, and finding that space to enthuse about it. And then you do have to keep up with children's literature to a certain extent. But, it's okay not to have a T-shirt that says I love reading.
But that's where, Reading Rocks and companies, there are other things out there that do similar sorts of things in terms of helping teachers like me keep up to date, that doesn't, where you don't have to go and do all of that reading yourself. You can rely on people who know what they're talking about, and you can get that information from them and go, okay, right, so this is where I'm going to start. And Reading Rocks is something that can give me that sort of base. Yeah, thank you for that. It does make me feel a bit better, because I am still insecure about it, and I've always been very insecure about the fact that I'm not an avid reader myself, but I'm very aware of the hypocrisy when I'm sat there, teaching a class how to write, and I feel quite confident as a writer, ironically. But there is that battle in my head all the time of, well, I'm not reading 4, 5, 6 books a month like these people that I see on Twitter. So I'm terrible. I'm automatically then I'm a terrible teacher. But
not the case. So your challenge is just to, for the next day or so, just make a little mental note or a jotted note, or on your notes on your phone. Just jot down every time you read something, and you'll see this picture emerge of Hayden the reader. Maybe I'll get that on a t-shirt for you.
I will do that, and I'll wear the t-shirt with pride. Thank you.
And do I have to feel guilty that I'm not doing long division every night?
Well, that's a good
Dylan
point.
personally does.
Yeah. Honestly, Jane, yes, you do. So you feel that guilt.
We'll get a box of shame out for you, Jane. You can sit in it.
Yeah.
Oh, not
Guys,
again.
I want to say a really huge thank you, not only for joining us for this awesome podcast episode, but I will just mention one more time for all the listeners, your extreme patience in letting Hayden not feel awful for his not recording of the whatever it was that happened.
I've really enjoyed recording this twice. It's been great.
No, I'm joking. Hayden, he knows. It's all in jest until after when I'll moan at him. Anyway,
he will be in the box of shame.
Just want to say a huge thank you, guys, for joining us. And yeah, anything you want to finish off with, or you can just shout out and say goodbye.
Oh, don't give us another chance to talk again.
Yeah, definitely don't give Jane another chance.
Say goodbye.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks so much. And go check out, make sure you check out the Teacher Squad podcast on Spotify.
Yeah.
Nice one.
Thank you, everyone.